The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. The Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. 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 On the Vera Thomas Show. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited to have Thomas Caplea here with me today. I have known him since he was 14 years old, and I have seen him grow to be such a wonderful, awesome young man. And before I even let him say a word other than, "Hi, Thomas, how you doing?"
Hello, Vera.
Let me share with our audience a little bit about Thomas Caplea. He is a dedicated addiction recovery advocate and professional with a focused background in substance use disorder, also known as SUD services. He began his recovery journey in March 2019 after a very aggressive 30-year struggle with substance abuse. Thomas started his robust SUD, oh, something just popped up on my in front of me, SUD career as a CDCA at Arrow Passage Recovery in June 2022, where he contributed to compassionate, client centered care. In September of 2023, he founded a local chapter of Recovery Church in Canton. He continues to serve as its president and campus lead, guiding community based recovery efforts and outreach. Thomas has a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Services with a specialization in addiction, strengthening his support of individuals in their own recovery journey. In August of 2025, Thomas expanded his impact to the Stark County community by joining ICANN Housing as the SUD outreach worker, where he applied his lived experience, leadership, expertise, and holistic approach to connect individuals with SUD treatment services and essential resources. Thomas most recently accepted a position with Raise Recovery and started the new year as one of their community liaisons and client advocates, where he connects individuals struggling with substance abuse to treatment with supportive housing. Thomas' mission is to use his personal and professional experience to provide recovery services, stable housing, and most importantly, hope for those affected by addiction. Thomas, I am so glad that you're here. And would love for you to take some time and share with our audience your journey. And let's start with your childhood and how did that impact you? And then just move on throughout your life.
Okay, first of all, Vera, I want to say thank you for the introduction, and I want to add that when I hear that, sometimes I'm still amazed that the man you were speaking about is me. All right, because I had a long, very aggressive struggle with substances, starting at the age of probably about 14. So back to childhood, I grew up with my mother and my yaya, which is my grandmother. My aunt also lived with us. When I was a little boy, my grandmother owned a bar on the northeast side of Canton. So alcohol, it was a part of our daily life. It was my grandmother's livelihood. So it was part of the culture per se. So I never thought anything was wrong with alcohol. Um, Also, only in the bar, you meet a lot of, kind of shady characters. And I believed to be good people because they were friends, they were acquaintances of my mom's and grandmother's. My mom was a single mom, so my dad was not in the home. He was hardly ever around, which caused a lot of resentments, a lot of walls I built, a lot of resentments I had that affected me all of my life. I always had a problem with someone canceling plans with me or at the last minute calling and saying I can't make it. And I mean, it would make me so angry. And when I was about 40 years old, one of my friends said, I'm not going to be able to make it. And I went nuts. And so I had to really stop and think about like, why do you react that way? Things happen. People change plans all the time. Well, what I came up with is that it sent me back. It sent me back to that little 6, 7-year-old boy who was waiting on the stoop for their dad to come and pick him up, and he never made it. So emotionally, that was very difficult for me, as it is for most people. Abandonment is a real thing. It's very traumatic. So that affected me probably more than anything. And those resentments, they almost killed me. I was a good student until I wasn't, right? I had all of these emotional things going on. I had no idea. I had no idea what resentments were, what abandonment was. I had no idea what those things were, but I know now how deeply they affected me. I started getting bad grades in school. Junior high, I started smoking weed. I started drinking. I started skipping school on a regular basis. I graduated a year late because of it. And so my use began to pick up in my early 20s, continued. I went to my first rehab in my early 20s. The day I got out, I used. So I've been in and out of several treatments. I've been in and out of prison 3 times. Long criminal record I had, but by the grace of God, it's been expunged. And so life was just a party for me. I started bartending in my late 20s. So I could drink, I could use all night, sleep all day, and start over the next day, right? With the cycle. So the disease of addiction, it progresses. It does not stay the same. It does not, you're not going to stay where you're at, right? So when I turned about 30, that's when I started getting consequences. It's the first time that I went to prison, away from my family, in there, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to do this again. But again, I get out and I use the same day. What led to me finally getting clean in 2019 was that I had a very severe health crisis. After a March 4th, after waking up after a weekend binge, I stood to the floor and I collapsed. I tried to get up and my legs just would not support my body. I couldn't walk. So I was rushed to the hospital, and immediately when I was being wheeled into the hospital, I could feel myself going in and out. I couldn't keep my eyes open, and eventually became incoherent. This was at Mercy. They couldn't diagnose me. They didn't know what was wrong. So they put me in an ambulance and sent me up the road to the Cleveland Clinic, where I spent about 5.5 weeks. I remember waking up in the Cleveland Clinic and looking around, and there were doctors all around my bedside. Had to be about 7 of them. They had tablets, they had notepads they were writing on. And so no familiar faces, all doctors. So needless to say, I was terrified. When I finally got to speak to my mom and see my mother, I told her, I said, listen, I'm dying. Just don't say that. Do you see what's going on? And no sooner than I said it, a doctor came in. He put a chair up beside my bed and said, we don't have much time. All your main organs are failing. Your kidneys are failing. Your lungs are collapsing. Your liver enzymes are high or low, whatever is bad. So they had to get to the bottom of it and fast. I want to say that same day they came back and they finally figured it out. It was a fungus that entered my bloodstream, and that fungus is meant to attack all your main organs, and it was actually residing in my lungs. They could see it. But I was far from out of the woods. They had some treatments for me. There's only so much they could do, and if it didn't work, it just didn't work. So we prayed a lot. I was in excruciating pain. I suffered so badly. My feet, when asked to describe the pain in my feet, I would say it feels like I walked on glass barefooted. Somebody poured gasoline on my feet and set them on fire. And this was day in and day out. The pain was so bad that they had me on a 2-hour fentanyl drip. So every 2 hours, they would administer fentanyl into my bloodstream. And so that lasted for about 2 weeks. And because of my history with addiction, which I was always in those later years very transparent about, because by this time, Vera, I had given up hope. I just basically accepted the fact that I was going to die in addiction, that I was going to let down my mother and my yaya. This was going to be my life. So the doctors let me know finally that it seemed like the treatments were working. My body wasn't rejecting them, but we were far from out of the woods, that it was going to be a long, hard fight. So like I said, I stayed in Cleveland Clinic for about 5.5 weeks. And from there, I was discharged to a nursing home where I would begin to learn to walk again. This was very challenging because my lower extremities were so weak. My feet hurt so bad. And they expected me to get up every day and try to walk. And so I didn't want anything more than to walk. It was very, very hard. So now I'm being challenged.
Wow.
This was a very, very humbling experience for me. Being a man who was so arrogant, who was so inconsiderate, who was so selfish, who was so egotistical, who could not take a suggestion or advice from anyone, was now confined to a hospital bed. And I had to push a button for someone to come and wipe my behind after using the bathroom. So I had a lot of time to think, how did we get to this? And it just came a point. I've always known God. And I want to say this. I always knew if I was going to be delivered from drugs and alcohol, it was going to be by the Lord, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. There was just no other way. I had been through treatment. I had been in and out of prison, in and out of jail. None of that worked. It didn't even faze me. The thought of going to prison didn't faze me when it came time to support my habit. So I spent another 5.5 weeks in the nursing home, and it was rough. And I was discharged from a nursing home to my home, to my mother's home, where there was a hospital bed in our dining room. I was discharged in a wheelchair. They would come to my house every day and give me physical therapy until I could get on a walker and walk, at which time I immediately started having my mom drop me off at this church that I had visited years before with a friend of mine. I didn't know anybody. I just knew that I had to do something different. I knew that I had to commit to something different. And so whenever they would ask for volunteers for any ministry, I would raise my hand. When it came time to go to those meetings or to those events that I volunteered for, there were times when I was in pain, when I was tired, when I just didn't feel like getting up and getting out of the bed. And I made myself, I had to. God would put it in my spirit. You got to do this or you're going to go back. So I did. I was obedient and I became very faithful in the ministry.
That is beautiful.
Very faithful in the ministry. And so, and I want to say 2020, so we'd be about a year later almost. I was laying in my bed, couldn't keep my eyes open, half asleep, and I hear this commercial on my television. Do you want an exciting and rewarding career in chemical dependency counseling? And God said, get up and write that number down. So that's what I did. Forgot all about it. And a few days later, I was in the dining room studying my Bible. And I heard the commercial come on television. My yaya was sitting in her chair and she said, wow, Tommy, you'd be great at this. At which time I called the school. I got enrolled and I started a couple weeks later. So now the fear and the doubt, the devil is at me. The fear and doubt is setting in. You're 48 years old. You don't know nothing about a computer. You just signed up for online classes. You know, how are you going to get through this? So it's time to start school and I struggled. So I called maybe about a week or two in and asked how long I had to withdraw from all my classes without penalty. And the lady, the advisor, told me she'd call me back. Well, instead, a gentleman called me back, and he was the dean of admissions. And he asked me what I was going through, and I told him. I mean, I spilled it. I told him about my bout with substance abuse, how long I was trapped in that bondage. I told him my stints in prison. I mean, I was on the phone with this man for over an hour. And he said, wow. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that I was spilling it like that. But he was intrigued to listen. At the end of the conversation, he let me know that he was also a believer. He gave me instructions to go to the nearest campus. He'd have someone waiting on me to show me and tell me exactly what I needed to know. So I went. I took very detailed notes. I started submitting my assignments. And about 14 months later, I graduated with an associate's degree with a 3.8.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
you know, that always, Revelations 12 and 11 says, you will overcome him by the blood of the Lamb and by the words of your
Your
testimony.
testimony,
And
yes.
so not only was that a humbling experience, but it taught me something. You know, it helped break that shame and that guilt so that I would be able to come forth and tell others my story and help them, because there's millions of me out there. There's
I
millions of me
know.
out there that struggle and suffer with substance abuse that was, and you know, this isn't widely used, but so many people, man, so many of our, especially our people, have been through so much trauma. And we
Yes.
build these walls and we forget how to trust people and how to love people. And so we run to these bad relationships and we run to these substances and we literally make them our Lord. We make them our God. And that's what I was doing. That's what I was
And
doing all of those years.
and you know, studies show that 60% of adults who have unresolved issues stem from their childhood. And you talked about resentment and feeling abandoned and that anger that came from that. That was very traumatic for you.
Oh
And
man, very traumatic. And I know people, I know men. that were in the same situation I was in, but their outcome was very different from mine. So it depends on the individual and how they're wired and how emotional and feeling they are, because I'm telling you, it caused my life to go in so many different directions that were not of God. I just was not the man that God designed me to be. I was running from that person because I wanted that instant satisfaction, gratification, yes, that I got when I used,
But
and
that was because of the pain.
it was
It was
because of the
because of the
pain.
pain.
But see, this is the thing about that. Once we become an adult, we know right from wrong. I had great teachers. I had hold on a second.
Okay. If you are watching this and you have friends or family that's facing addiction, have them come watch the show or watch the replay, because Thomas's story, it's not just his story. His story may be your child's story, may be your story. So please share this video with others who may be struggling right now, who may feel hopeless, may feel like there's nothing that they can do. All right, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So what I was saying was that once we become an adult, we're responsible. We're responsible for the outcome, right? So, am I going to let this pain and this abandonment? Am I going to allow it to fester and grow, and turn me more into the devil's child, or am I going to confront it and work through it and become the man that God designed me to be? So we have a choice. And even when I was out there and I was doing it, although I couldn't stop, I knew that I still had a choice. And so when someone who suffers from substance use disorder tells you that they can't stop, they're telling the truth, because physically the disease model of addiction is that addiction begins to resonate and live in our midbrain, which is the part of our brain that does not do any thinking. It's only there for survival. It's the part of your brain that tells you when that pit bull runs off that porch to run, right? You don't have to think about that. You're going to do it. It's the part of your brain that tells the man that's been in the desert for 3 days, hello?
I'm here.
Without anything to drink, that if someone comes and offers that man a bottle of water and says, I'm going to give you this bottle of water, but if I give it to you, you're going to lose your family, you're going to lose your career, you're going to lose everything you own. The midbrain is going to tell this man, and he is going to do it without even drinking, without even thinking, to take that bottle of water and drink it. So you really don't have any control when that addictive gene is activated. And not everyone has that gene. That's why some people can drink heavy for years or use hard drugs and stop. Those type of people, they don't have that gene that ignites the addiction. And so they can do that. Unfortunately, obviously, I didn't have that gene. So let me get back to my recovery. So I decided, after I graduated from school in 2022, I decided to go to Aero Passage and work as a CDCA, a drug and alcohol counselor. Very rewarding for me. And, I was a little rough around the edges, and so the people who worked there and my superiors were very graceful and patient with me throughout that process. These are the people that God began to put in my life. He began to put me in places where people could love on me and support me and show me the way, because I didn't know the way. I didn't know how to interact with coworkers. I haven't had those since the 90s when I bartended. I didn't know what it was like, So man, I'm telling you, I gave them people a run for their money, boy. Listen,
Give me some examples.
My goodness. Oh, wow. Well, first of all, and I'm still working on this. I do not have a filter, right? I
Okay.
do. If I'm thinking it, I'm
It's
gonna say
coming
it.
out.
Yes, it's coming out. I wasn't worried about or even thinking about hurt nobody's feelings. I didn't know that words cut like a knife. Because
Oh,
I was
yes.
used to that. Those are the people that I surrounded myself with. I my drug of choice was crack cocaine. So I did that for over 30 years aggressively. If I wasn't locked up, I was using, right? So I wasn't always in the environment though, but like I said, the disease of addiction is progressive. So eventually, especially those last 5 years, I was very much and that was my social circle as well. And so, we talked to each other. Oh my goodness, just so foul, and we did foul things. We were just foul, and so that's all I knew to be. And so, just because I got cleaned up for a year or two, I still didn't know any better. I go to church and be around church folks, but I had enough sense not to conduct my way, you know conduct myself that way around them. But when I'm
Right.
around people who I'll say regular people, yeah, they ain't had nothing coming. They didn't have nothing coming. But at the end of the day, we all became friends. We all became close. They understood what I've been through, and so they are still there to support me. These are just the people that God put in my life, and without Him, I would not have this support system that I do today, which is amazing. I mean, anywhere from family to friends, and most of my friends are family, to be honest with you, these days. And so that's another thing. I get to build all of these relationships, especially with my dad's side of the family. Although he's not here anymore, I can still love on them and have them love on me. So that's another great part of
Yes.
recovery and what God have done for me, man. It's just, oh gosh, just like I was saying with your introduction, I'm sitting here, I'm literally pinching myself. Like, is she talking about me? Because I'm used to being everything but that, so that's where I am with that. So I started working at Arrow. Soon after I started working there, I decided to go back and enroll back in school for a bachelor's degree. So that's what I did. Okay. So I was big
Let
on making amends. Okay, go ahead.
let me ask you, you said that in high school you didn't live up to your potential. So
Absolutely not.
when you graduated with a 3.8 average, how did that make you feel?
It was more confirmation that God was working in my life and was truly the center of it. Because see, Thomas doesn't do things like study. Thomas doesn't make commitments and keep them, right? It's the Holy Spirit that's working in me, right? Just like what we're doing right now. People ask me to speak, and here we go again. That fear might begin to set in, that doubt might begin to set in, and so I'm able now to identify those negative thoughts and that negative self-talk and kind of redirect myself. But my first thoughts are, call Vera and tell her you're sick. Call this person and tell them that. I'm serious. But being a man of God and wanting to really be that, I have to do what I say I'm gonna do now. I have to
Yes.
keep those commitments. I have to.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I began making all these amends, right? I'm running up to my neighbors. I'm sorry for being a bad neighbor. I'm cash apping people money that I owed them. And all of this feels great. But there was one person, and that was my uncle, my mom's brother, who, I hadn't had any real contact with him or his family, my cousins, for years because of my lifestyle. They don't get it, and which is good. They shouldn't have to. You understand what I'm saying? So that was kind of tough for me. And then in May of 22, they invited us to their home in Naples, at which time my uncle told me that you know, you're going to have to work to gain my respect and my forgiveness because you've put my family through a lot. You know, his mother, his elderly mother, you know. So I got it. You know, I understood. Also, that same year, that was May. And in August, I came home from work one day and my mother told me that my yaya was diagnosed with kidney failure. And at that time, she was 94 years old. So there wouldn't be any dialysis or anything like that. It would be hospice because it'd be so traumatic for her, you know, on her body.
I'm so sorry for your
And
loss.
that, thank you, I appreciate it. But that was probably the most difficult thing that I had experienced so far in my recovery. It was really difficult for me. I started the grieving process far before she even passed. You know, I'd come home and I'd see her and I'd see her health declining, and I knew what was happening, you know? And so it was very painful to watch that happen to someone you love so much.
Yes.
But at the same time, she was 94 years old. She lived a great life and she was able to be in her house, being taken care of by people who love her the most. So that brought me comfort. And
Yes.
so on it was Thanksgiving time. I went to bed on Tuesday night. About 5:30 in the morning on that Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, my eyes just open. I'm laying there, my eyes just open. I'm like, what is going on? So I noticed immediately that I couldn't hear my yaya snore because by this time she's not coherent. Um, Her mouth was always open and it would be dry. So you could, she snored really loud. And I remember getting up and going into her bedroom, sitting beside her bed like I often did, and held her hand, kissed her on the cheek. And I just remember her her hands, and even when I'd kiss her, my lips would be so warm. She'd be so warm. And so she passed away that day. And even now, talking about her, I can still feel the warmth. That brings me
Yes.
some peace.
Yes.
So that was very, very, very difficult for me. But in the time of dealing with that, I was so afraid of how I was going to respond to
Mm.
seeing my grandmother like that. Here I am with 2 years sober, right? It's not that many, maybe three by this time. It's not that many, but I would always go to Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. Will strengthen you
Mm.
and uphold you with my righteous hand. And that's what he did. He kept me. He kept me safe because I wanted to numb that pain so bad with a drink or with the drug. And to be honest with you, looking back, it just increases my faith all the more. It just increases it all the more.
Because you knew when you could not carry yourself, he was carrying you.
He was carrying me. And listen, I grieved for months, at least 2 months leading up to her death. And then after she passed away, I there were times I would get off of work and I'd pull into my garage. I couldn't come in my house. I'd be out there, man, bawling my eyes out, missing my old girl, you know?
Hmm.
But,
Wow.
but,
But God.
but God, because she had the opportunity, I had the opportunity to be sober, and she had the opportunity to see me that way. And I had the opportunity to wait on her hand and foot, to rub her feet, to kiss her and just love her all over the place. And so for that, I will forever be grateful for God. For that reason alone, For that reason alone, I'll remain faithful.
That's awesome. And we have Jemiah Harper. Hi, Jemiah. She says, hi, Vera. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Jemiah.
Yes, yes. Please let people know about this particular show. And I want it because, Thomas, with everything that's going on in our country, it there, and I'm sure you being in this field, have you seen an increase in?
Oh my good. Well, yes, I see an increase, but the reason is for the increase is because I think the information is out there. I think that um, people are speaking out about it, so more family members are listening and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, this sounds like such and such." You know what I mean? It's just the awareness has become so big and so bold. I mean, if you look around you, I remember when I started going to treatment in the early 90s, we had Glen Bay, and that was it, you know. And then in the mid later 90s, then you start to see and hear about Quest services here in Canton.
Mhm.
But you look around now,
I
and there's
know.
treatment centers everywhere, but we need them. We do.
Yes.
We do. It is especially the good ones. So in 2023, in January of 2023, I started taking I had an idea. Let's bring Arrow's clients to church if they want to come. So I started going to get them on Sunday morning and taking the van and bringing them to church. And so it was just like every week there was two or three of them going up giving their lives to the Lord. I'm talking about clients who didn't believe before this point. I mean, they were hell bent that there was no God, and some of them now are members of my church. So the clients started coming more and more and more. Eventually we had to bring two vans to bring the clients to church every week. There was 3, 4, 5 of them getting saved. And so this is when I had the idea, God put it on my heart, to start a recovery ministry. So I went to my pastor and said, God placed this on my heart. And he said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And I said, yeah. He said, well, do it. He said, well, nephew, if God trusts you, surely I trust you. So I began doing some research, and this a gentleman came to visit our rehab from Florida. He also owned a treatment center in Florida. And so he started telling me about some of his buddies that have this recovery church movement. And so I started researching. Before you knew it, I was on Zoom with them once a week being trained. Before you knew it, we had a launch date. And in September 22nd of 2023, we launched Recovery Church Canton. At that time, we were the 47th recovery church in the States. And only 2.5 years later, we're at about 110 recovery churches in the United
Oh,
States
wow.
and abroad. And
That's
so,
amazing.
since we started the recovery church movement, oh, I used to have a perfect tally, but well over 200 participants have given their lives to Christ, and we've had
Wow.
about 40 some baptisms.
Oh,
So I
wow.
know that this is what God wants me to do. I know that I'm walking in purpose, and again, sometimes I just can't believe it.
And first of all, you could not walk in your purpose had you not gone through what you've gone through.
No, so that's going to bring me to another one of my favorite scriptures, which is James 1, 2 through 4. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. So, although, we don't want adversary, we don't want those times of struggle and despair. But you know what I've learned to begin to do is treat them as an unwelcome guest. I wasn't really expecting you, but come on in. and let's get through this, you know?
Get
And
through. That's the word. Get
because you're
through.
never going to get over, right?
Right.
And so I tell my clients all the time, even me, all of us, it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. Say you're driving down the street, you get rear-ended, boom, your head smacks that windshield. You get about 5 staples in your forehead, right? It's 2 years later. You're healed, right? The cut done closed up. It's healed real nice. And you're driving down the street and you see an accident. What's the first thing you're going to think about and remember and feel that impact when your head hit that windshield, right? So although you've gotten through it, it seems to have healed, but you're not going to forget. And it's okay to still feel those feelings. It's how we respond to those feelings.
Yes. It's how we relate, react, and respond.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, one thing about this field that was traumatic for me, I had 2 young ladies on my caseload. Now we're going into 2024. I had 2 young ladies on my caseload. One was 19 and the other was 27, and they were roommates in the treatment facility. But one of their biggest issues was codependency. And so the treatment center that I worked for at the time was co-ed, right? We tried our best to separate everyone at all times. But these are people, young men and women, who are coming into treatment. They're coming out of drugs. They've been through a lot of trauma, and they're very codependent, and all they want is someone to love them. So they begin to form these relationships while in treatment. And so once you address that, their engagement just cuts off, right? Because to them, you're trying to rip them away from somebody they love and that loves them, right? When in all actuality, you're trying to help them. You're trying to help them focus on themselves. So these 2 young ladies, they were discharged from our program. One went to sober living down the street from us, and the other one went back to where she lived, which was Sandusky. And these 2, my caseload was always made up of men, and I liked that, right? I was the only male counselor that worked at my job for a while. And so I would get all the men clients, which was fine by me, because I feel like when they start putting women on my caseload, it gets a little tricky, because especially if they have like some type of sexual trauma, or they've been violated, they may not feel comfortable to talk to me about those things. But these 2 young ladies, they were comfortable, and I was comfortable with it, and I developed a very strong and loving bond with them. And that's not hard to do in this field. You're supposed to not, but it's kind of hard not to if you're human. Anyhow, I lost both of these young ladies to drug overdoses, and it was very hurtful to me. I was crushed. I couldn't help but to wonder. Vera, are you there? I couldn't help but to wonder if there was something that I could have done differently that would have changed the outcome of what happened. But I did learn something. I learned a lesson, and that's that we can only. What happened?
I don't know what happened. My screen is totally black. Oh my God. Such a wonderful story. And it's frozen. My mouse won't even move I can't even. Oh man. Okay, I'm going to turn off my computer. Give me a couple minutes and come back in, okay? No, stay on the phone. Oh man, you were doing an awesome job.
We lost Vera. I wonder if I'm still on there. It's because it says live. It says live 40, and it's counting.
see what's happening on YouTube. Here, I'm going to my YouTube page. Okay, let me see what's going on here. All right, you're on. All right, just keep talking, Thomas.
Okay. Okay. So what I learned is I can't work harder than the individual that I'm treating. And that was a very valuable lesson to me. It doesn't stop me from forming those bonds and becoming close to people, but it stops me from having expectations, so to speak. So that was the lesson that I got out of that. And even those two, I mourned those two deaths for a long time, and I still do. I still grieve over those young ladies. That was in 2024. So in January of 2025, I received my bachelor's degree in human services with a focus on addiction, um, which was very rewarding to me, man, because I put in so much work, and to see all that hard work pay off was big for me. Um, 2025, there were so many good things happening. That's when I accepted a position with ICANN Housing as their SUD outreach worker. It was a brand new position. It was new to the country. It was funded by a grant called the SOS grant, which is the Federal State Opioid and Stimulants Response Grant. And eligibility for that program, which they still have at ICANN, is that you had used an opioid or a stimulant at least one time in your life, and that you are homeless or at imminent risk of homelessness. So this is where I really began to learn about the homeless population and the housing crisis that we have in this country today. It was actually pretty heartbreaking. It also gave me an opportunity to work along my supervisor and build an outreach program that connected people experiencing homelessness and addiction with treatment resources. So my time at ICANN, we're talking about real outreach now. I met people under bridges, in woods, living in tents. And they reminded me of where I had come from. Although I had never experienced those type of things, I could have easily been there.
Wow.
I also learned that empathy is more powerful than judgment. And most people don't need saving. They just need an ear. They need someone to listen, somebody to hear them.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said, empathy and listening. And we've got a couple of guests here. Beulah, your
Hey,
best
Bill.
friend. She said it's a great story. And when I got interrupted, she said, "You're still here, so I'm glad you kept talking." Um, so anyway, thank you, Beulah, for listening. And this story is just amazing, absolutely amazing. And earlier you had mentioned that, and this is back when you were sharing your story earlier on, that bacteria that almost killed you,
It was a fungus.
a fungus? Was it from drugs, or did they not know?
They didn't really know. This is so crazy. The way that most people get it is through bird droppings or bird dander.
Wow.
Yeah, so when you act out there acting crazy and a fool like I was, who knows? Who knows where I got it? But I obviously had it for a while because a severe case like I had is really extreme, and that's why it was so difficult for them to diagnose me. And thank God
Wow.
that they did. And it got to the point where it also caused me to have neuropathy, which is known for diabetes, people that are diabetic to have. And so that's another reason that they were so thrown off, because I had been back and forth to the emergency room for my legs, pain and numbness in my legs and feet. But they were telling me, like, did you start a new job? You know, did you do this? Did you do that? They ran some tests. They gave me ultrasounds. Couldn't find anything, because neuropathy is usually only they associate it with diabetes.
Right, diabetes and also cancer. We got a
Yeah.
couple more comments here. Beulah, she says, y'all know I wasn't going to miss this. And then Carolyn Anderson, hi. She says, love your story. Yes, this is a
Hi,
powerful
Candy.
story.
So I want to talk some more about what I had learned and been through at ICANN for the short time that I was there. I also
Yes,
learned that housing is healing. When someone has a safe place to stay, they have hope and a chance to grow. And so that's where the motto housed first comes from. That is something that we've picked up in the last few years, saying, listen, let's get these people, whether you're homeless, whether you're addicted, whether you are battling some type of mental health, let's get these people housed and then support whatever they're going through, right? It's unfair to say you have to get yourself together before you're allowed to live in a house. We need to make
right.
sure that you're going to be able to take care of this house, right? So that's where that phrase comes from, housed first. And that's where we get into our permanent supportive housing. See, I learned, so I'm so grateful for ICANN, even the relationships that I built there, especially with my supervisor, such a kind and loving man. I am telling you, this man serves his butt off, man. And he taught me so many things just about being kind. And I knew when I accepted that job at ICANN that God was trying to do something from my heart. I knew it. I knew it. And so I also learned there that
And while you're looking, I was involved with ICANN when I moved back from Los Angeles. In fact, ICANN, I worked with them on that march on Washington for the homeless that happened back in 1989. And so I know that housing, and housing is a major issue even right now. It is a major issue. And I know ICANN does everything that it can to make sure people are housed, and they assist with their rent while they're getting on their feet, correct?
so there's different programs. One of them is called permanent supportive housing, which you'll receive a voucher, and that voucher will literally pay your rent every month as long as it doesn't exceed the voucher amount. And then there's another one called rapid rehousing, and that one's a little different. So I think with that one, you are required to pay some of your rent. But permanent supportive housing, you if you choose to live somewhere that the voucher covers, you may not ever have to pay rent. And there's so many different opinions about that. But my opinion is they are human beings and they deserve somewhere to live. And everyone doesn't function the way that God has blessed us to. They just don't. But that doesn't mean that they deserve to live under a bridge or in some woods, right?
Absolutely.
So I learned so much from there. I learned that teamwork creates transformation. When the community works together through outreach, housing, healthcare, and peers, recovery becomes sustainable. Only then. It is us all doing our part. These might not be our friends. They might not be our brothers and sisters. They might not be our children, but they are. They're children of God. And they deserve a stable home.
Absolutely. And
Purpose. Let me say this. This is powerful. Purpose is
okay.
the antidote to relapse. When people find purpose in service, in faith, in helping others, they build real freedom that no substance can replace. I
And that
wouldn't
come
trade this for anything.
yeah, but that's because Scripture says, I knew you before you were born. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you. But what happens is we get
Jeremiah
in
11
the
and
way.
29.
Yes, we get in the way. We allow, you talked about choice, and you also mentioned that with addiction, when people say I can't help it because of that part that's in the brain,
They
they're
can't help
telling the
it.
truth. They can't help it.
They can't help it, and they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop unless,
until,
of course, they're incarcerated in treatment. But
or
if they're
find
not,
their purpose, or
or
find their
find their purpose.
purpose.
But in order for me to find my purpose, Vera, I had to have the time for myself to heal and really the opportunity to look at what was going on and and why and how this happened, right? But God set me up so perfectly that it was a divine plan. He brought me home in a wheelchair, in a hospital bed. I couldn't get out of it. And so in those early days of me coming home, I wanted to get high. I wanted to use, but I couldn't even get up and get to the door to get it. Right. So he knew exactly what he was doing with his child, man. And that's another reason that I love him so much. And I try to be as faithful as I can be. Right. I am still only human. There's days I don't want to go to church. There's days I don't want to go to recovery church. There's days I don't want to go to Bible study. But when I think about
The goodness of God and
my
all
God,
he's done for you.
where I could be, man.
Wow.
So I do want to leave with this. Is it time?
Yeah, almost. I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay.
And so you
I
you
do
do
want to
your
leave with this.
thing.
I do want to leave with this. Today, I no longer fear adversity. I welcome it. I said this earlier. I see it as an unannounced guest, another opportunity for me to grow. My prayer is that everyone under the sound of my voice is that you see that whatever barrier you face, whether it's addiction, grief, loss, or fear, it can be overcome through faith, humility, and perseverance. I'll close with Psalms 107, 2 through 8. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy. They wandered in the wilderness in a solitary way, hungry and thirsty. Their soul fainted in them. They cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distress. My friends, today I am redeemed, and I say so. Thanks, you everyone, for listening to my story.
Oh my God, Thomas, this has been amazing. And the thing is, I didn't talk
Praise
much.
God.
Normally, I'm interacting more, but your story was so important that you needed to have the time to share it. And my prayer is that those of you that are listening will understand that God, love is the way, God is the answer, and love is the way. Have faith. Trust your faith. Walk in your faith. Pray that the Lord will give you the strength and what it is that you need. And you don't have to do a long, drawn out prayer. You can just say, Jesus, help me. And he will help you. So, Thomas, again, it's been my honor and my privilege to have you on my show. And I am praying that this show has touched some lives that want to see transformation. So thank you. I love you. God bless you.
I
And
love
may
you too, Vera. Thank you so much for calling and inviting me. I also want to tell everyone that as long as I have known Vera, she has been a positive person, always cheering, even when I was bad, she was still cheering me on. So I could never say no to Aunt Vera. I just love her so much. Thank you,
thank
Vera.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, listen, everybody. God bless you. And I will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Stay warm because it's going to get bad again over the weekend. So stay warm. God bless. And Thomas, thank
Good
you
night,
again.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
The Vera Thomas Show.